good. You were good today, too. Yes. Well, North Carolina woman, it's nice to see you. Good stay away. Good to too long. You miss us up there. That's good. We miss you too. All right. You know Thessalonica because you know Salonika. Right? You know when Yugoslavia 20 years ago broke down and the ethnic cleansing and all of that, and most of the pictures that you would have seen on TV of people running with their grocery baskets from store to store with mortar shells coming down to blow them up, that occurred mostly in Salonika. Thessalonica. Second reading, Paul's letter to Thessalonica. Same location, same place. All right, just a little piece of history and a footnote there. Now, moving on. Thessalonica was part of Macedonia. And you would know Macedonia, of course, because you've all heard of Alexander the Great. All right, there's been 2 movies about Alexander the Great on the big screen in the last 10 years, and I think that, was it Brad Pitt who played Alexander in one of them? Was it? Who was it?
Yeah, I saw that movie.
It was Brad Pitt, right? Yeah. Well, eye candy, Alexander the Great. Just think that. You're good. However, Alexander the Great considered himself great, and what he was trying to do with his expansion of his empire was, in his own words, it was his aim to marry the East to the West. In other words, it was his aim to unite the world in one kingdom, in one empire. And he diligently tried to do that, taking his armies and recruiting new armies as far as he could go. And he eventually met his match and his end in a nation that we know oh too well, Afghanistan. That is where he met his end as an empire builder, and where his dreams of marrying the East and West died. Well, anyhow, jumping up 400 years later, Paul crosses over the Hellespont, moves into Greece, and goes to Thessalonica. And he has a very good period of time there where the people are very receptive to talking about what gospel is. What is good news? Thessalonica was a very wealthy city in that day. It had a population of 200,000 people, according to the Roman census. And it was known as a major shipbuilding port in its day. And so it was a very wealthy, very busy, very active city, and had just a most excellent reputation. The interstate highway system of Rome, and yes, they had interstate highways. They were not, ancients were not ignorant people by any stretch of anybody's imagination. The interstate highway ran right through the middle of Thessalonica, and so it was a major stopping point on the way for travelers for the postal routes and the whole shooting match. And one of the sayings in the ancient world during this time about that city was this: so long as Mother Nature does not change, Thessalonica will remain wealthy and prosperous. Well, I guess you can figure out what happened, huh? Mother Nature. We're all familiar with how nature has its own way with us whenever it so chooses. We've seen partial destruction of parts of New Jersey and Long Island. We're now watching in glorious living color the destruction of the Philippines with the typhoon. We're all watching, as if it's happening in our backyard, the movement of that typhoon over to drop 8 to 16 inches of rain in a few hours in Vietnam and South China. And you know, the one thing that draws us all in common together, along with the forest fires that we were watching all summer long out west, and the flooding in the middle American states, it felt like the world is getting whacked out. And it just continues on and on and on until you're just not sure precisely what's going on. It just makes you a little edgy and a little nervous. And you know, somehow we've participated in helping this along You know, regardless of the politicos and whatever anybody says, just a little edgy about stuff. But the one thing that does happen also is that it also draws us together because we recognize that we're all in the same boat on the planet Earth, sharing a common humanity. And that is precisely the place where Paul is going in his 2 letters to the Thessalonican congregations. What happened back in that day, from 48 AD on up into the early 100 AD period, were a series of earthquakes that in 51, as a matter of fact, when Paul, a year before Paul wrote one of his letters to this congregation, Rome was partially destroyed by an earthquake. But it was happening all over, from Rome over into Greece, into Turkey, down into Israel. Colossae, which you know as one of Paul's letters, right, to the Colossians, that town was destroyed and was only recently found in the last 20 years because of an earthquake. But in any case, they were feeling as if the world was just collapsing in on them. And so, with Paul's preaching about the gospel and the good news, the people there said, you know, this has got to be the signs of the times. Jesus has to be coming again. And because things are so stupid and so crazy right now, and we know that Jesus is coming again, we're just going to back off, and we're not going to care too much. We're just not going to care too much about too much, because it just is going to hurt too bad if something bad happens again. And so the people started to back off, those Christians did in that town, because it was just a little too much to bear. And the scary thing is that they took the idea of the second coming and made that their excuse for not caring. So Paul sent them a letter. Matter of fact, he sent them 2 letters, basically saying to both of them, to the congregation in both those letters, who do you think you are, really? You think you're something. You think you know when Jesus is coming again, and you don't know nothing. You don't know when he's coming. I don't know when he's coming. And you're using it as an excuse so you can be a load. And just let the world come to you in all of its goodness or its badnesses, and just allow it to come to you. After all, it's all about me. And for you, it's all about you. Yeah. And so it's easy enough to not care and have a socially acceptable reason for not caring, because Jesus is coming again. So we can allow anything to go on at any time, which is what the congregation in 51 AD was doing. They were using the excuses, all of the different things going on in the world as a reason for not caring too deeply or too richly, for not stewarding the world in which they lived. Now, what Paul did in his letters, he suggested 2 things. Now listen up. What he was saying first was that you are a hypertaste. Yeah, you think I'm swearing at you, don't you? I know. It really comes out good, you hypertaste. What it is, a hypertaste, is if you ever get onto a Roman galley, which I don't know why you would, but if you ever do, there are 2 levels of rowers. And a hypertaste was on the lower level of rowers. And the word was, on the lower level of the rowers, always, pull your weight. Pull your weight. You saw the scene in Ben-Hur, right, with the drummer? Pull your weight. Pull your weight. That is what a hypertaste was. And that is what St. Paul said to the church then, as I say to you today. Your calling as a follower of Jesus is to pull your weight. That is who you are, and that is what you do. You are not going to be a load on this world, on this planet, because Jesus has said you are not. You have been called to pull your weight. You taste. Yes. The second then thing he said was that you are an oikonomos, a more gentle word, a more poetic word. You are a steward of all things. And when he wrote to that congregation, as I say to you, you are a steward of all things. You have been selected and you have been chosen for better or worse. Whether you like it or not is not even the issue particularly. That's called the interplay of doubt and faith, which is necessary so it can help you to clarify where it is that you stand in this world. Do you care or do you not care? Are you an oikonomos, a steward of the world in which you live and all of its related parts, or are you not? There's no middle ground on that. And that's what Paul said to the people then. And an oikonomos, a steward, it's always about trustworthiness all the time. See, back in Paul's days, a chief steward was the head of the household. And was also always a slave. And so Paul would say, of course, and it was true for the people who hired those stewards as the heads of their household, the one quality you have to have is managerial skills and trustworthiness. And so when Paul was saying to that congregation in 51 AD, as I say to you today, you are called to be both trustworthy and skilled in the use of your personal resources that have been given to you. So you have those things which Paul identifies to that congregation as having real weight-bearing matterness in the world, that which you offer. You pull your own weight, you are trustworthy, and you have skills. And you know that you are a person of faith when you're wrestling with those particular issues. I was visiting in the hospital last week, and there was somebody, a gentleman in the bed next to the person I was visiting, who had had a stroke with his right arm. Which arm do you eat with? Do I eat with my right arm? Yeah, right. I eat with my right hand, right? Yeah. I eat with my right hand. I couldn't remember. Is that my left or my right brain function that's going bad? I can't tell. Well, anyhow, this guy couldn't do it, and boy, was he hot. Oh, he was just miserable to his son who was visiting and his wife. And his son just totally ignored him, and the lunch was there, and the dad had said, I'm not eating. I'm starving. I don't care. I'm going to die because I can't use my arm. Son, it was great. I was just overhearing this. And yes, I was doing it on purpose. I wanted to see how this was going to work out. The son totally ignored him, picked up the spoon, put some food on there, started talking to his dad about the game that was on TV, and stuffed the thing in there. And his dad went, but the food came off in his mouth. And then he swallowed and retched a little bit, and then the son just kept doing it. Second time, he choked again, did this, the look, like I'm going to starve to death because I'm mad at everybody. And then pretty soon, the son just kept stuffing food in his mouth, and he kept eating and eating. They started talking. And they never once talked about him eating. It was a wonderful, wonderful use of skills of this adult son who had done just a wonderful thing, and his wife who was just right there chatting him up while they're stuffing food in his mouth. It was very cool. But the gifts which we are given for the sake of the upbuilding of other people's lives is quite amazing and quite astounding and very, very powerful, as you all know from your own lives. That's the point Paul is making. To be a follower of Jesus in this world is to be somebody who, A, pulls your own weight, and is a person who is trustworthy with the resources given to you to use for the sake of the world and your neighbors and your family. And it is to make good, full, intelligent use of the gifts that you have been given. That's Paul's response to a congregation in 51 AD who was basically given it up. You pull your weight, you use your gifts, and you practice the trustworthiness you've been given. That's your gift to the world in which we live. And no matter what the weather is going to be like, no matter how much damage the world does to the planet or how we recoup our losses, no matter the horrible, horrendous things that are going to happen and do happen, you're going to be a trustworthy, using your gifts, pulling your own weight Christian. That's all we have to offer. But it's pretty good. Amen.
Amen.